Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to do a compare and contrast of two very similar books. We're going to be talking about The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix and Final Girls by Riley Sager. And we're going to do a little compare and contrast between the two. So first what we're going to do is I'm going to read you the synopsis and tell you a little bit about what I thought about each book, and then at the end I'm going to kind of talk about what I thought about them side by side. Now, there will not be any spoilers. I won't give away any big twists or anything like that. I probably won't even say character names because honestly I have a horrible memory and I won't remember anyway. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and yes, I have my laptop right here in my hand because I usually read everything off my phone, and my phone is recording. It is what it is. Okay, I'll try to look somewhat normal while reading a screen in front of another screen. This is for The Final Girl Support Group, which is what we're going to start with, by Grady Hendrix. In horror movies, the final girl is the one who's left standing when the credits roll, the one who fought back, defeated the killer, and avenged her friends. The one who emerges bloody, but victorious. But after the sirens fade and the audience moves on, what happens to her? Lynette Tarkington is a real-life final girl who survived a massacre 22 years ago and has defined every day of her life since. And she's not alone. For more than a decade, she's been meeting with 5 other actual final girls and their therapist in a support group for those who survived the unthinkable, putting their lives back together piece by piece. That is until one of the women misses a meeting and Lynette's worst fear are realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to take their lives apart again, piece by piece. But the thing about these final girls is that they have each other now, and no matter how bad the odds, how dark the night, how sharp the knife, they will never ever give up. Okay, let's just start by saying I am a huge Grady Hendrix fan, and this is not the first book of his that I've read. So I went in with really high expectations, and this book really did not meet my expectations. I really hate to say it because a lot of people really love this book, but it fell a little flat for me. So the one thing about this book is it has a huge cast. We're talking 6 characters. We're following one main character, but there are 6 final girls altogether. And then we have a therapist and her family, and then we have a whole bunch of other side characters. The cast is huge. And while we're getting into this book, we're also getting into all of the final girls' backstories. Now, Grady Hendrix is 100% a nostalgic writer, and I absolutely love that. So each of the final girls was mimicked after a slasher film. Do you know what I mean? One of the girls' storyline was the same as Scream. Another one was Friday the 13th. And all those films, basically a final girl had a story that was very, very, very similar to that. So I really liked that aspect. But I just didn't see enough of each of the characters on the page. Everything was just such a whirlwind. I really thought that if we were going to have such a big cast, that it needed to be a bigger book. It was at 350 pages. The book really could have been bigger if we were going to really get into it. And there was one character in particular that we just didn't get the story on at all, and that was really disappointing to me because I was super interested in her story. But if we're looking at just Lynette, which is our main character, very unreliable narrator, which drives the plot really great. But she was a very reactive character. It just seemed like she had all of these plans, and then the second something went wrong, she completely fell apart, and there was no backup and nothing else. And we were just jumping from one thing to the next, and she really just didn't slow down to think, and that made it hard to follow too. Grady Hendrix is a really good gore writer, and I was really disappointed with the amount of gore that was in this book. There just wasn't very much, and I thought that it really could have been amped up and we could have seen a lot more. The twist. I figured out who, the bad guy was, and I was so very proud of myself because I'm not very good at guessing bad guys, but I did. And then when the reveal came, I was so disappointed with the reveal. It just fell completely flat for me. It didn't live up to my expectations, and I was disappointed. and the ending of the book was just not really what I wanted it to be. It really sounds like I'm bagging on this book. I'm so sorry. I just didn't love it, and I really love Grady Hendrix's books, and so I was a little disappointed in this one, and that made it really hard when I read his other books that I've really loved, and this one I just didn't really love. I thought the cast was too big. I thought the plot was really shaky. I thought the ending fell flat for me. The twist wasn't big enough, or it didn't deliver. And I also think that the other final girls in the book were really hard on Lynette for, I don't know, no good reason. And it made me feel like she was completely alone the whole book, like fighting this fight that no one else was really interested in. And in the synopsis, it makes it sound like they like worked together, and like in all honesty, they didn't. They really left Lynette hanging out to dry like all the time. And they really made it clear that they didn't even really like her, and that made me really sad for Lynette. So yeah, overall, I did not absolutely love this book. I thought there were some really great moments, and I love the nostalgic writing that Grady Hendrix always seems to deliver. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. Let's move on to Riley Sager's book, Final Girls by Riley Sager, and I'm going to read you the synopsis, and let me warn you, it's a little bit longer than the last one, but just bear with me. 10 years ago, a college student, Quincy Carpenter, went on vacation with 5 friends and came back alone, the only survivor of a horror movie-scale massacre. In an instant, she became a member of a club no one wants to belong to, a group of similar survivors known in the press as the Final Girls. Lisa, who lost 9 sorority sisters to a college dropout's knife, Sam, who went up against the sack man during her shift at the Nightlight Inn, and now Quincy, who ran bleeding through the woods to escape Pine Cottage in the man she refers to only as him. The 3 girls are all attempting to put their nightmares behind them, and with that, one another. Despite the media's attempts, they never meet. Now, Quincy is doing well, maybe even great thanks to her Xanax prescription. She has a caring almost fiancé Jeff, a popular baking blog, a beautiful apartment, and a therapeutic presence in Coop, the police officer who saved her life all those years ago. Her memory won't even allow her to recall the events of that night. The past is in the past. That is until Lisa, the first final girl, is found dead in her bathtub, wrist slit, and Sam II appears on Quincy's doorstep. Blowing through Quincy's life like a whirlwind, Sam seems intent on making Quincy relive the past with increasingly dire consequences, all of which makes Quincy question why Sam is really seeking her out. And when new details about Lisa's death come to light, Quincy's life becomes a race against time as she tries to unravel Sam's truths from her lies, evade the police and hungry reporters, and most crucially, remember what really happened at Pine Cottage before what was started 10 years ago is finished. Okay, so right off, I really liked this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 rating because it was just really good. It has a smaller cast, and one of the final girls is immediately, as we read in the synopsis, found dead in her home. And so that only leaves 2 final girls. So it's a very close-knit group of people. We have Quincy, who is an unreliable narrator, and she really does not remember what happened to her the night of her massacre. And so the whole book, we're just trying to get pieces of what she remembers and put together what happened to her at Pine Cottage. And I really like this for the pace because it jumps back to what she does remember and what was happening leading up to the massacre, and then we're also jumping back to where she is right now and how she's actually handling her life, which is not that great. She puts up this facade that she's fine and well and moved on, but really she hasn't dealt with anything, and I feel like that's because she doesn't actually remember what happened, so she's not able to cope with her trauma directly. The side character Sam, who is another final girl, it was a very interesting side character. Just the whole book, you couldn't really get a good read on her, and I thought that was really clever writing. And the twist at the end of the book, wow, I did not see it coming. Like a mile off, you could not have told me that's what was going to happen. I'm a bit of a lazy reader, so I don't always pick up like little cues and things like that, but this one just blew me away. Like, Riley Sager delivers again. This is not the first book of his that I've read, and I guarantee it will not be the last. He always wows me, and wow. If you like thrillers, if you like horror, I really highly recommend this book. It really delivered for me. And if you like thrillers in general, Riley Sager, please pick up any one of his books. I promise something will work for you because he's such a great writer. Okay, so let's move on to the interesting part. Let's compare and contrast the two titles together. So, which one did I like better? I liked Riley Sager's book better. I think because it had a smaller cast, it was able to really hyper focus in on the issue at hand, what was happening, and it drove the plot for me. The jumping back and forth between what was happening to Quincy on the night of her massacre versus what's happening now was great. And there was all this, kind of like detective work stuff, and you didn't know who to trust and where we were going and what was going to happen to Quincy. So I personally liked Riley Sager's book better. Now, for nostalgic writing, Grady Hendrix all the way. His little side stories about the final girls really delivered for me, and I really liked that. Something I was super annoyed with both books. Like, the last 3 pages of both of these books could have been identical. Like, word for word, they basically ended exactly the same, and the last 3 pages of the books made me mad on both books. When I read Grady Hendrix, the last 3 pages, I just remember sitting there thinking, what was that? Why did we have to end it like that? I don't like that at all. And when I got to the end of Riley Sager's book, basically the exact same thing happened. Last 3 pages, wrapping up the story. Like, they are almost mirrored images of each other. And I remember thinking, really, again? I don't like this either. And so the last 3 pages of both books really just rubbed me the wrong way. I honestly think we could have ended it a little bit sooner and just cut that out. If you've read both of them, then you know what I'm talking about. Drop a comment down below. We can talk about it, but I'm not going to give anything away in the not going to give anything away on the video right now. But the last 3 pages really made me mad. I didn't care for that ending, quite frankly. And I didn't care that they were both so similar. Like, it's like I could have put those last 3 pages in Grady Hendrix's book, and I could have swapped them with Riley Sager's, and you would have had the same exact reaction. So I didn't like that. I think the twist in the Riley Sager book was better. I wasn't able to guess the villain in Riley Sager's book, and I was able to guess the villain in Grady Hendrix's book, so take that as you will. I think that though these books have a similar plot line, like we have the final girls, and we have one final girl that ends up dead or missing at the beginning of the book, and it's the rest of the final girls' time to shine to figure out who's killing them off or who's coming after them or something. They have very similar plot lines. However, I think Riley Sager did it better. And I hate to say that because I absolutely love Grady Hendrix, but the big cast, I think, is what killed Grady Hendrix's book for me. For me personally, it's what didn't work for me because we were so focused on everything else that it was hard to stay focused on the original plot of the book. And because the cast was so big, I also didn't get all of the stories from all the other final girls that I was really looking for. It was very glossy. I just didn't get the depth that I wanted, that I know that Grady Hendrix could have delivered. I wanted him to deliver depth, and he didn't do it. Now, with Riley Sager's book, we're highly focused on Quincy, and we do have Sam, who is another final girl, and we do get a good look at her past, at her massacre. But because there's only one other final girl that we're dealing with, it was really easy for Riley Sager to make that complete and concise and not go too much into it, but give us enough to make us satisfied. And with Quincy's story, we get an hour by hour walkthrough of what she went through at Pine Cottage, and it really sold it for me. It really sold it for me. That's what I thought of both of these books. That's what I thought of them up against each other. If you disagree, leave me a comment. Let's chat about it. I love talking about books with people. It's like my favorite thing to do, absolutely. If you want to see me compare and contrast other books, let me know in the comments. If you want to listen to me talk about books to movie adaptations, I do that a lot too. So If I know there's a movie based off a book, I'll usually try to read the book first. So I've done a lot of books to movie adaptations. Not on YouTube, but I'd like to get into that. So if that's something that you're interested in, drop me a comment. I'll look into it. But other than that, that's all I have for you today. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please hit all the buttons down below so you'll know when I'm posting, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!